What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Two Buck Sports Podcast, and there is a lot going on behind the scenes. I'm your co-host, Rusty Buckets, here with my buddy Drew, Uncle Buck. Welcome to the podcast, sir. The podcast that almost was not.
Yeah, I'm telling you, you have the most undependable podcast co-host in the free world. Uh, yeah, so Sunday night about 7:30, apocalypse happened in Tampa County, and
Again.
I went to work at 8 o'clock and saw we had 11,000 of our 14,000 kind citizens out of power, and so that's where I've been ever since. And so Rusty, once again, showing he's a better man than me, hung around. It is 10 o'clock Eastern Standard Time.
Yes,
He
it
is
is.
up. He's ready to go. He's had enough time sitting around waiting for me to come up with a whole bunch of notes and topics. And Rusty, I appreciate you. But here we are, and I'm I'm excited. I told you right before we got on the podcast. It's great to have a conversation with an adult that's not about work. That has not happened for me since Sunday night. If I still had cell phone minutes, they would be maxed out by now. But now I get to talk about something that is not work, and I'm just giddy. So
Yeah,
let's get started.
absolutely. I knew that I got a phone call from Drew the other night at 9:45, and Drew knows I'm the resident old man, and I go to bed early. It is what it is. I own that. But I knew when he called me at 9:45, it was not good news about the podcast. He was in full Power Ranger mode, called me from work, just letting me know, hey, man, I'm out doing my thing. We're having to get these people's power back on. At that point, they'd gotten some of them back on, but it was still going to be a long week. So, Drew, I am glad that we were able to make it happen on our regularly scheduled night. But just know that I am a man of the people, that I am staying up past my old man bedtime for this.
Yeah. Well, they say that married couples, you're typically on one end of the spectrum and you meet in the middle. Like I was a night owl and Haley was early to bed, and we've kind of met in the middle at 9 to 9:30 most nights. That's what me and you're doing. We're just like an old married couple.
That's
So,
it.
we're meeting in the middle, except you've started walking my way, but I hadn't had to. I haven't really walked yours much.
That's fine. There are going to be nights where I'll have something come my way. You have to come halfway my way. So,
Yeah.
cheers to that. But speaking of cheers tonight, before we get into anything, we need to raise a glass. You need to raise
Okay.
a glass to the Memphis Grizzly that was Mr. Tyus Jones. He's going to lead off our first segment of the night. Tyus, that's for you, buddy.
Gone
What a
but not
great
forgotten.
Grizzly he was, man. Stones was one of the best regular season players we had. When there were stretches where Ja was out, and we went 25-2, and Tyus was a double machine. Tyus was a great calming presence coming off the bench. And for those of you keeping up at home that are Grizzlies fans, which hopefully by the time this is episode 39, this deep, we're converting you to be Grizz fans. You know the impact that Stones has had on our team, and know that he was involved in a massive trade. They brought in a great player we'll discuss in a minute, but this portion I want to dedicate to one Tyus Jones, who is now a Washington Wizard.
Yeah. So it goes without saying. Like I say, it goes without saying now. It goes without saying because we've said it so many times on this podcast as we were recording this, basically throughout the whole NBA season, and it was touched on in a segment every single week. His impact on the Grizzlies team was more impactful, was greater than anyone could have ever dreamt of for a backup point guard. But what he was a leader. He was stoic. He was always dependable. He was always healthy. In the 4 years that he was a Grizzly, he led the league in assist to turnover ratio every single year. He was exactly what we needed, especially when early career Ja was plagued with injuries for
Mm-hmm.
long periods of time throughout pretty much every season. And last season with a suspension, he was always, just think about how many of our favorite sports teams have had seasons derailed when their star player is away from the team.
Yeah.
How many times are you able to say, well, that's all right. We've got Tyus Jones. We've got this guy. Like John Morant was first team All NBA, an All-Star game starter And when he went out, we did not mind.
Didn't miss a beat.
Yeah, we knew that it was a regular season good, and playoffs that may be when you see your faults, but we were the 2 seed for 2 consecutive years in the NBA playoffs, and it can singularly be attributed to Tyus Jones.
Yeah, 100%. Tyus' efforts on both ends of the court, like you said, could be a steal machine, was a facilitator like no other, and just a great stalwart. He would be starting on the majority of NBA teams. And so I hate that he's going to the Wizards. It's a great place for him to go get his teeth cut as a starter, because there will be some game management and body management he'll have to learn being an NBA starter. He can do that in Washington, but you heard it here first on the Two Buck Sports Podcast. Tyus Jones will end up as a starter of a contender or a playoff team in the not so distant future, because his future is very, very bright as a starting point guard.
Yeah, and I want to say that he was appreciated appropriately as a Grizzly.
Sure. He was compensated.
It was always kind of that he was always kind of talked about as the possible trade chip.
Yeah.
And I kind of regret that now that he's gone, because he was so much more than that. And I realize that, but it seems like that's what's talked about way too much, instead of just appreciating the fact that, man, we've got the best backup point guard. And even calling him a backup point guard seems like an insult.
Yeah, and I own that. I said last week's episode that he's worth more to us in a trade, and I've thought about that a lot. That I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all, because without his contribution, you're right. We're not a 2 seed in back-to-back years. We're not one of the hottest young teams in the NBA, and we're not getting the hype that we have been getting without Tyus and his contributions. So I don't mean it that way. It's definitely, we're going to miss him. It's going to be weird seeing him in a Wizards jersey. He's going to be one of those guys that I'll root for the rest of his career, because he gave so much to the team and sacrificed so much. Because like you said, he was more than a backup point guard. He was the highest paid backup point guard in the league, because he could go start in a majority of other franchises outside of a handful that had their point guards nailed down. And so I will forever appreciate his contributions to the boys on Beale Street, and wish him well in his career. Like I said, we'll always root for him unless he ends up on one of those LA teams.
But I know we both said that it kind of felt insulting to view him as the best trade piece. Mm-hmm. However, we traded him, and who did we get, Rusty?
We got Marcus Smart. Man, like, he was not on. We'd kicked the tires of him in previous seasons. Just thought he was untouchable in Boston. And I think Desmond Bane, who has scored so many brownie points with me through this process, Desmond Bane, our starting shooting guard, was up at 3 a.m. interacting with Twitter when the news broke. I woke up to about 6 or 8 text messages and a ton of Twitter notifications.
Right.
The next morning that it happened, I immediately text you when I woke up.
Yeah, I woke up to Rusty saying, dude, we've got to do an instant reaction pod. And my first thought was, what happened?
That's right. And Desmond Bane was up at 3 a.m. This is a family podcast, so I'll clean it up. But interacting at 3 a.m. with Joe Mullinax, at Joe Mullinax on Twitter, who said it's 3 a.m. and I can't sleep because Marcus Smart is going to play basketball for the Memphis Grizzlies. I am so hyped. And Desmond Bane, our starting shooting guard, tweeted out, woke up to the news now, I'm up, let's get it, and tagged Marcus Smart in it. Dude, if that don't tell you what you need to know right there, I have been on cloud 9 since this trade happened. I don't know about you, but just the more I think about it, it just works.
Yeah, so this trade goes Marcus Smart with Grizzlies fans and the Grizzlies organization goes so much further than what the fit is for him. And the fit is perfect, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
But Memphis, as Zach Randolph once said, is a blue-collar town, and I'm a blue-collar guy. And we've always appreciated the grit that these gritty players bring to us. That's what we appreciate. That's what endeared us so greatly with Zebo and Zebo and Tony Allen and Marcus Saul. It was that mentality that they brought, that it was going to be a war and we're ready for it. Mm-hmm. And that personified on another team gets recognized by Memphis, because regardless of the laundry that you wear, we appreciate the grit that people play with. And
Yep.
Marcus Smart, amongst maybe a handful of others, Jay Crowder is one that I've often thought about, or Pat Bev. It's always appreciated by Memphis fans if you have that grit. But no one more than Marcus freaking Smart.
Yeah, man. Because Marcus is not scared of anybody. He's what we wanted Dillon Brooks to be. He can guard anybody 1 through 3. There's a lot of 4s, A, he can guard right now, and B, that if you told him he couldn't guard, he would really try. And then he knows his role. He can go get you 30 on an offensive night if you need him to. But his role, he recognizes, is that defensive stalwart and a facilitator. And so he's going to be massive while Ja is out. And then when we get Ja back, all he's going to do is open up the floor that much more for Ja to slash and cut and do his thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So our biggest beef with Dillon Brooks is that he shot a very low percentage but a very high volume. He didn't realize his role. Well, Marcus Smart has a lot of those same flaws, except for the fact that he knows his role. You stack up just the shooting slashes for both players, and you think, well, these are basically, it's like spot the differences in the pictures. They're virtually the same picture. However, Marcus Smart averages 5 fewer shots per game. And that tells you what his mindset is.
Yeah.
Dillon's mindset was always, this team is going to go through me, regardless of the fact that he was at best the 4th best player on the team.
Yeah.
He was always going to try to take the first most shots, the highest amount of shots. You don't have to worry about that with Marcus Smart because he's coming off a team in which at very best, he was the 3rd option because you've got Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on the team. And he was also a 6th man on that team for much of his career in Boston.
Yep.
And so you look at how it fits as we kind of transition into that now. You see how it fits with the Grizzlies is, one, you lost your backup point guard in this trade. You lost Tyus Jones. Well, in the future, there's your backup point guard. It's Marcus Smart. Now, he's a backup point guard plus because he's not going to – he will be on the floor with Ja a lot.
I think he'll be a starter for most of his Memphis Grizzlies career. There's a lot of creative lineups that Taylor can do with that, not to interrupt you, but I think he'll be a starter.
Yeah, and we'll get into that. I'm curious to see how Taylor does those lineup situations. But in the meantime, Ja's got a 25-game suspension. He was a starting point guard for Boston throughout their last 2 runs in the playoffs, once to the conference finals, one to the NBA finals. So he's a winner, and he also feels that defender role. Now, he is not the prototypical defender that Dillon was. Dillon was barrel-chested, kind of short arms, but he was 6'6", 6'7". Marcus Smart's only 6'3", 6'4", and so I'm a little hesitant to say that he is going to thrive in guarding bigger wings. However, he is a pit bull, and he can honestly a bigger mismatch on switches with the biggest of guys.
Right.
Because he is a pest that's biting at your ankles of the bigger guy that maybe isn't as nimble,
As the kids say these days, he's got that dog in him. And don't tell him he can't defend somebody because all he's going to do is go out and do it. He is relentless on the defensive end. And that's one thing we hadn't even addressed yet is we now have the reigning back-to-back defensive players of the year. So Tripp, our homeboy, brought up born and bred Memphis, was defensive player of the year last year. The year before was Marcus Smart, who got that award.
The first guard to win it since Gary Payton.
In a long time. Yeah, Gary Payton in the 90s. And it's because of that relentless dog mentality that when he's on that court, man, we talked about it last week with Bob Huggins' teams in West Virginia. He's going to start defending you when you get off the bus. And it's that dog mentality that got him that DPOI. And now we got the last 2 in Memphis. So we're back to that team that people are going to circle on the calendar because they don't want to play us because you're going to be in the mud. You're going to have to hustle. You're going to have to earn it when you play the Memphis Grizzlies. And it's because of who we now have on the defensive end.
You get a superstar guard that's traveling to Memphis, and you're going to see a lot of DNP rest on that lineup, which is trash. But hopefully the new games played wrinkle in the awards fixes that a little bit, but that's
and honestly, we really, some people were saying we overpaid, yada yada yada. But the more you deep dive on what we gave up, like Tyus needed to go because there were some rumors coming out he wanted to be a starter, which I don't blame him.
We did right by Tyus.
We did right by Tyus. We gave him an opportunity to go start. We gave up our first round pick this year, which was the mid-20s again, and then we gave up the Golden State pick next year, but kept our first round pick. So we still have a first round pick next year. We gave up the Golden State pick next year, which in all likelihood is going to be a 25, 26, 27th pick in the first round, which how many of those dudes end up panning out anyway? So we really didn't give up that much to get a superstar defensive player, former defensive player of the year, to fill in a lineup that's going to be lethal without Ja. And then when Ja comes back, it's only going to get that much better because there's going to be so many creative things. A small ball lineup, and we'll get into this more as the summer goes on, but of Ja, Marcus Smart, Dez, Tripp, and BC is going to be that lineup that runs you out of the gym because they're smaller, they're more athletic. BC's looking good in his rehab videos, jumping up out of a pool. He's getting that bounce back. All intents and purposes points to this is a phenomenal trade. This is a win for the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah, I want to address the trade as well in regards to the picks. First round picks are valuable.
Sure.
They are extremely valuable, but they are valuable when you're giving the first round pick. Mm-hmm. Tell me who the 25th pick of the draft was this year. He wore a Grizzlies hat on the stage, but it went to ultimately it went to Detroit.
Sure.
But my point is the 25th pick of the draft is a dice throw at best. The draft is you get some gems, but
we got Dez at the end of the first round, but those are few and far between.
Right. So the 25th pick of the last few drafts, Marcus Sasser. That's who was picked with the Grizzlies pick that went to Detroit. Last year, Blake Wesley. So Blake Wesley was the 25th pick of the first round to the Spurs last year. How much do you think Blake Wesley is worth now? That's my point. The 25th pick in the draft is only worth a player before the player's drafted. You know what I'm saying?
At best, those guys are going to be two-way players. Right. At best.
And so, in 21, Quentin Grimes, decent player for the Knicks. Mm-hmm. Emmanuel Quickly, he's really good for the. He ended up going to Philly.
Yeah.
And he's good. He's the exception, though, because the year before that, Nasir Little, Mo Wagner, some guy from overseas, I don't know, Bryce Johnson, Jarrell Martin.
Yeah.
And then you go back to 2012, Tony Roten.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go back to 2010, Dominique Jones. Those are all three Grizzlies picks. That's three picks that the Grizzlies made at 25, and they've all been trash.
Yeah, none of them have panned out.
So we gave a 25th pick. We gave Golden State's pick. They traded for Chris Paul. They're not trying to suck next year. So that's going to be a pick in the 20s.
Exactly.
And Tyus Jones, which is going into the last year of his contract, I don't see the downside.
No. It creates room that we'll get to in a few minutes but for that MLE. But continue. Yeah, absolutely. I don't see a downside.
Yeah. And so I think it's a home run because it's the whole bird in the hand versus two in the bush thing. Mm-hmm. Because you know what you're getting out of Marcus Smart. He's got 3 years left on his deal. He's a heart and soul kind of guy. He's a character guy that you want in a locker room who's got the gravitas to look at Ja and Jaren or whoever's out of line, young guys, rookies, whoever's out of line, and saying, I'm Marcus Smart. I've been to NBA Finals, plural. I've been to conference finals, plural. And I've been contributors to every team I've been on. I know what I'm talking about. You need to get in line. And that is the most important part of this trade for Marcus Smart that needs to be talked about. That is number one.
he's a culture guy. He's got the clout that Steven Adams didn't have last year when he tried to have that chat in Denver. No offense to Steve-O. He's a big fan of the podcast.
He's just
no
not
offense to you,
wired that way.
Right. But Marcus Smart can look Jaron in the face and say you're playing soft. He can look John in the face and say, stop screwing around. You're messing this up. He's got the clout to do that. And he's a community guy. He invests in the community. He's a big investor in kids with cancer. And so it's going to be a natural partnership with St. Jude there in Memphis. He did a ton of work after his mom passed away from cancer, which is why he dyed his hair green. I hope he continues that and dyes it blue.
No, green's the color. He needs to keep it green.
Keep it green for his mom, who for those who don't know, his mom made fun of his mohawk, was kind of picking him about his hair and said, "Oh, the next thing you're gonna do is you're gonna dye it green." And then she passed away, and he has dyed it green since she passed away. But just a high character, high quality guy that you need in a locker room with a bunch of young guys. And Zach Kleiman nailed it when he said we might have invested too much in youth and rookies. He went and got the opposite of that. A guy with some clout, a guy with some experience that comes into a young locker room who's on the cusp of what could be greatness, right? You look at the Nuggets and most of their guys are 27, 28, and that's kind of that window when people start winning championships. And all of our guys are 24, 25.
Right.
So Marcus Smart is going to be able to bridge that gap and bring this team into the future. And I think he's got the clout to get Ja to behave, Jaren to, because if Jaren and Dez continue on their trajectory and their improvement, you get that culture investment of Marcus Smart. This team's going to be dangerous in a couple of years.
Absolutely. It checks all the boxes, and there's still holes on this team, and there's still some roster needs. Mm-hmm. And I believe that will start to get filled tomorrow when free agency opens.
You know, people are saying that Kleiman's done. I don't know that he is. We have room for the mid-level exception that's going to be kind of that veteran wing. There's a lot of guys that are going to be available for that. And so, you know, a couple names that keep coming up that are tied to the Grizzlies: Jeremy Grant out of Portland, Kyle Kuzma is a name that keeps coming up, Harrison Barnes. There's a lot of names keep getting kicked around that are going to be worth that MLE that we might could do a sign and trade with the Dylan Brooks.
That's the thing. So none of those guys that you mentioned will fit into the mid-level exemption because they're going to want too much money. Mm-hmm. So sign and trades is going to be the way it gets done, and it'll have to involve Dylan Brooks.
Yeah, and it can be done. And I don't know that the relationship is soured as much as Shams might have made us think. I think there's some hope there.
It doesn't matter if it's soured. Like, business is business, and they can come out and publicly and say that under no circumstances will he be a Grizzly next year. But ultimately, you still own his rights, and you've still got to, you know, we're cool with letting him walk, and you can, you know, Team X, you know, if you're cool with us letting him walk and you try your hand in straight up free agency, then fine.
Especially with the number he's wanting, I don't know that he's going to get.
Nobody's going to pay him $20 million a year.
No.
So,
but if you can tell him, hey, listen, you know, like Kuzma, Washington may be one thing, but like, listen, you do a sign and trade and we can get you to Sacramento. That's a team on the rise. We can use Portland, play with Dame, and get these guys like a Harrison Barnes or Jeremy Grant that comes in. I think Harrison Barnes fits. It makes sense. There's a good chance he's likely going to end up in Indiana. So I wouldn't be mad with Kuz or Jeremy Grant either. I think you started Harrison Barnes and work your way back because he brings an athleticism that would help this team tremendously.
Yeah. You know, those are all pie in the sky. I think that's best case scenario, especially with guys like Jeremy Grant, who I think there's teams out there that's going to want to pay him. You know, that somebody will be willing to drive up the dollar on Jeremy Grant. I'm looking at guys like I like Dante DiVincenzo.
Yeah, that'd be a great pickup, man. We need that shooting. You know, Luke Kennard coming off the bench. DiVincenzo is a sharp shooter.
And he's a good defender.
In that upper echelon of offensive scoring.
Yeah, and so there's guys out there, and I'm not saying a big move has to be made. No. You know, this front office has shown time and time again that they're willing to play the long game, and so.
And they're high on Jake LaRavia. They're high on his development this offseason. Maybe they're seeing something I'm not. He had some flashes, but by and large just wasn't great last year.
No,
Big body Roddy's coming along, but there's some hope that Zaire is going to take that step. And I love Grizz Twitter, man. Grizz Twitter is an interesting place, like most NBA Twitter is. But so many people think
Twitter is.
Right. So many people can think that we can package a Santi Aldama, John Conchar, and Jake LaRavia and turn it into like people saw them play. If we don't want them, what do you think? What makes you think Golden State's going to want them?
This isn't Kevin Costner in draft day. You're not going to end up with the top 3 picks.
You're not going to trade those 3 guys for a Kevin Durant. It's just not going to happen, man, because people watch them too. It ain't just us.
Well, and I love the fact they kind of go about this the same way that the Cardinals do, except the Cardinals are more arrogant. Where the Cardinals are like, our prospects are better than any other prospect, so screw you. We're not trading anybody. We're just going to raise our guys up on corned beef and pizza, and they're going to be all-stars. And that's normally not true, but the Grizzlies have yet to be wrong, you know. So we'll see.
The last thing I'll say about it, the last Boston Celtic that was 29 years old and a product of the Oklahoma State Cowboys and a former Big 12 Player of the Year worked out pretty good in Memphis is all I'll say.
I mean, the number 9 will forever hang in the rafters of FedEx Forum.
First team all defense.
On a stupid record.
Yeah.
And not a jersey. Yep. That's so dumb. But
it was cool the night they hung it. Like the first time I saw it, I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Nobody even knows what it is. Everybody down here has tuned us out now because they don't know what we're talking about. But in lieu of hanging Zach Randolph's jersey in the rafters like a normal franchise, they decided to put a plaque of a record and put the number 50 in the middle of it.
Yeah. And Drew and I were there. It was a cool ceremony. They played well into the night. 2/3 of 3-6 Mafia was there. It was a good time, but the record is a little something.
And 3-6 Mafia, Marcus Smart wears 36.
It's perfect.
It's a match made in heaven.
It's perfect. The last thing I'll say about the Grizz before we talk about it, and I'm sure later when we get to NBA free agency and other trades, shout out to Xavier Tillman, man. The team picked up his option. Yeah. This is a Xavier Tillman Stan podcast, and we've always been fans of his. He's just a grinder. You talked about that earlier with Marcus Smart fitting the mold.
He just doesn't suck.
He just doesn't suck. And he gives you big minutes. He's not going to have a gaudy stat line, but you're going to look back at the game and realize, we wouldn't be in that if it wasn't for X at those certain moments of the game. He did that in the postseason and the regular season. So shout out Xavier Tillman getting his bag and staying with the Memphis Grizzlies.
Yeah. Props to him. It was a no-brainer for the Grizzlies to pick up the team option on what is a peanuts contract.
Absolutely.
An absolute no-brainer for the Grizzlies. But regardless of the scenario, I love rooting for Xavier Tillman, and I hope I get to do it for a long time.
Same. Absolutely. So we got a few more sports topics to get into, but I feel like this is a good natural breaking point before we get into a few other topics to go to our Instagram poll and our Instagram questions. Okay. We had a few good ones that came in. So the first one is from Cousin Kirk. Those of you who've been listening to the podcast know that he is a regular on the show now and will make appearances from time to time. First one is, why can't diehard collegiate fans go to their own college that they root for an education instead of their rival? I've been waiting on that all day.
So, Kirk, who is basically a brother to me, although we're cousins, is talking about me attending Mississippi State University. The answer is quite simple. I'll tell you the backstory. Rusty, I'm sure you've heard this. I told my dad I'm going to be an engineer when I grow up. I told him this as a grown adult because I went back to college at 23 years old.
Post rock star career.
Yeah. So I told my dad, I said, I want to be an engineer. He said, engineers typically go to Mississippi State. And I said, yeah, but I'm going to go tour Ole Miss. And I got a meeting with the dean of the electrical engineering department. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tell him exactly why I want to go here. And I'm sure I'll leave convinced. Well, I sat down with the dean of the electrical engineering department at the University of Mississippi after walking by the Ole Miss practice facility and watching the team practice and getting kicked off because they thought I was spying. Head over to the engineering department. I sit down with this not so charming fellow. Most engineering professors are not charming. And I told him what I wanted to do. I want to work in the power industry for a utility company, and I want to get some on-the-job experience while I'm here. And the dean of the electrical engineering department at the University of Mississippi looked at me and said, "You need to go to Mississippi State." So I called my dad and I said, "Dad, I can't go to Ole Miss and have this degree when the dean just told me to go to Mississippi State." So
Drew came to the good side.
Yeah, no, I didn't. That's the moral of the story. The moral of the story is, people, in times you go through trials. The Lord puts you through trials and tribulations, but as long as you stay true to yourself and to the man who made you, you will come out the other side stronger, and you will probably get a College World Series title out of it.
You did. Your alma mater got one, that's for sure.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It could be.
Speak of the devil. Cousin Kirk coming in hot. What's up, buddy?
Oh, he left.
Oh, he's in and out. Oh, no.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on.
He's out keeping the roads safe, and you never know what kind of service you're going to get out there as the Mississippi Highway Patrolman.
Yeah. So I guess an argument could be made that I brought a College World Series to both teams. So you're welcome.
Thanks. I appreciate that. Just know we got ours first.
Yeah, that's fine. We got ours last, and we will have it most recently.
Hello?
Hey.
What's up?
Is this the $2 Sports Podcast?
Indeed it is.
Buckets, I got a little ranting I want to do, and if you don't mind, can I have a minute of your time?
Listen, Kirk, we were going through your Instagram questions, so the floor is yours, sir. Take off.
All right, Buckets, I've been riding around for the last few days, and you know what makes me hotter than a jackrabbit on cocaine?
What's that?
It's a true blue, red, white, and blue. Hotty toddy, gosh almighty, who the hell does Uncle Buck think he is, bashing the school that gave him a high-quality education?
The people are going to think this is scripted.
Thank you. This is exactly what I was just talking about.
The Mississippi State University gave this man a degree in electrical engineering.
No.
And hang on now. There's my show. I'm going to take the floor now. Hang on. I'll let you get yours out in here in a minute. He's not even kind enough to shed some light on the uprising of the programs and the education that Mississippi State has to offer. Makes me so mad I could chew up nails and spit out a barbed wire fence. Now, Uncle Buck, I don't want you to think I'm just picking on you. So just like a kidney stone and gas, I'm willing to let it pass. But, I mean, my lovely wife is just as guilty. A diehard UT fan her whole life, and even did a year of school in that Rocky Top country. But she wised up and came back home to marry the second best looking guy in Kossuth, and that's okay. She goes and gets her a high quality education from the Mississippi State University on to scream Rocky Top on Saturdays. Just makes about as much sense as pulling a cattle trailer with a Miata. I mean, what do you think of that?
I couldn't agree with you more, man. I saw these cats when I was at Mississippi State, just like Uncle Buck, wearing the other school colors, man. But once you go there, you're supposed to bleed maroon and white.
You're supposed to believe maroon and white. Now, I get it. Everybody's got their fair day, and everybody's got the right to cheer for whoever. But I mean, at least do some recruiting, build up the program, make it, give it that gumption.
The in 1940s, I'd hate for the Jews to go through concentration camp and for everybody to come out thinking they ought to be Nazis. No, we went through there. We got through it, came out the other side, and we're on to live our life the way the good Lord intended.
Now, I might have misheard this, but did I just hear you compare Mississippi State University to Germany?
You did.
Yes, not to Germany.
Good gosh. Good gosh.
That
sounds about right.
Not too long before
Just for that comment right
there,
I'm glad y'all didn't make it no super regionals. Just for that comment right there. I am perfectly happy with that. They can go down there and swim at the bottom of the barrel. And I've never wanted to be a fish in my whole life, but I'm glad y'all are swimming down there at the bottom of the barrel.
That kind of comment makes me glad he is not rooting for our esteemed university there, Cousin Kirk.
Rusty, Kirk, listen. Just a year before I went to Mississippi State University, two Mississippi State students defected from the United States to join ISIS. I don't think it's a stretch.
That was all planned. That was just conspiracy, like the grassy knoll. That was just planned. That wasn't real.
I've just got one question for you, Kirk. You said that Jessica married the second best looking man in Kossuth, Mississippi. Who's number one? Is it me or Rusty?
Oh, that's gonna be Big Rob Gibson. That's gonna be big. That's gonna be Big Rob, the one I get my looks from and my build from. That big old Rob Gibson. Which, by the way, Drew, I know you were back home. I know you were back home this past weekend. How'd you like that fresh air and that good smell around the pool at your mom and daddy's house?
You ever seen the movie Radio with Cuba Gooding Jr.?
Oh yeah.
When he's on the sideline and he keeps yelling, "Chicken-ish, chicken-ish, chicken-ish." That's what I was doing in my front yard because Rob cleaned out his chicken house and dumped all the manure right in our front yard in the pasture and started spreading it this weekend as I was at home. So I was just kicking rocks in the front yard going, "Chicken-ish, chicken-ish, chicken-ish."
Oh, we've been spreading it too, and it's done had that good rain on top of it. So once you dig in it with the bucket of the tractor, it's just that muddy, crushed, just nasty.
And there's nothing that smells worse than fresh chicken scat. I tell you that.
Well, I debatable. Ole Miss fans stink pretty bad.
Oh, good call. Good call. Good call.
I'm telling you what, there's no group of people that smell worse right now than an LSU fan after the bender that they've been on since Monday night.
Especially after consuming 64,000 Jello shots in the course of a week, man, or 2 weeks. It's just wild.
Yeah.
Oh, man, they're tearing down Baton Rouge right now like crazy.
Yeah, they've got a pretty unpleasant smell just as their base setting. It's
old corn dogs.
Yeah, it's gonna be bad right now. Corn dogs and natural light.
Well, I mean, we're not dealing with top brass here. I mean, they all invested in property that was 2 feet below sea level. I mean, so we're not dealing with the smartest ones of the bunch here. I'm just kidding. There's probably some good people down there at LSU. I just never met them.
Right.
I've never seen them on TV. Nothing.
That's the one thing the three of us can agree on is our disdain for the LSU faithful.
Hey, can we all pour one out right now? Kirk, I don't know if you're at home or on the road, but if you got something cold in your hand, just hold it up in the air, and let's all just cheers to the failures of Arkansas.
Yes, we can all agree on that.
Here's to a second participation ring coming their way next year.
Yeah. So
10-4, good buddies. I just gonna chime in and give my little rant. Y'all be careful, stay safe, tip your waitresses, and don't go home with strippers named Cheryl.
10-4, good buddy.
We'll see y'all.
Thanks, Kirk. See you, buddy.
I told you, Rusty, every once in a while I just like to drop him a link and tell him, just surprise us.
Love it, man. I'm here for it. That's our best segment. The musings of a Mississippi Highway Patrolman. I am here for it. Kurt, we appreciate your service to our great state, the greatest state in the land, and what you do out there for us, man. Appreciate you, buddy. Moving right along with some of his other thoughts. I got 2 for you that deal with cell phones, Drew, and I'm going to throw them at you back to back, let you see what you think.
Okay.
First one.
What are my thoughts on TikTok? Because I could go for an hour.
No, it ain't TikTok.
Okay.
It's Apple and Samsung. So the first one is, why aren't iPhone chargers called apple juice? And the second one, if you work security at a Samsung store, does that make you a guardian of the galaxy?
What does Samsung have to do with the galaxy?
Their phones are Samsung Galaxy.
Oh, okay.
Come on, man.
Yeah, I was like, Samsung ain't a planet. Sorry, guys.
You've been working since Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah, apple juice is funny. I like, much like I call myself a Power Ranger, getting some apple juice is something I may start using from time to time.
I might steal that.
Yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy is kind of a stretch for me.
A little bit, yeah.
How often they give these Galaxy phones away in Happy Meals these days? They don't need security.
No, they're trying to get everybody to get one, and nobody likes the green text in the group chat. And there's some in my golf group chat and other ones. Nobody, don't be that green bubble, man. Don't be that guy.
I always laugh at the iPhone commercials versus the Samsung commercials, like the AT&T. They're like, trade in any new iPhone for the newest iPhone on a 3-year payment plan, and then the AT&T will be like, or you can get a Samsung Galaxy. Bring in your Samsung from 1946, and we'll give you 7 free phones.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, are these really worth anything?
Yep. All right, so the next couple are from Taylor, who is obviously influenced by her brother. The first one is LeBron James is the GOAT. Not accurate.
That's not a question.
That's a statement. And it's a fallacy. It's inaccurate.
It's a maybe.
Until
I hate it when people say, like, give definites on this. Like, there is, you can compare LeBron and Giannis. You can compare LeBron and Kobe. I just, it's too different. And this is not Skip and Shannon, RIP, or Skip and Stephen A, RIP, but I cannot just sit here and have a logical argument and take one side or the other.
Well, I can, and we'll save that maybe for a future episode. But I saw something on Twitter the other day that said, until somebody robs you for a pair of LeBrons, don't come at me about him being the GOAT.
Oh, so it's about shoes now?
It's the number one shoe in the world. I mean, you think about Jordan for that, and then there's stats to back it up.
I'll tell you what, in our debate for LeBron versus Jordan, why don't you start with the point that Jordan sells more shoes and make that about his basketball career?
We could do that.
I mean, you could, but it's still a fashion accessory, and it's not on the court basketball.
It's a starter because he was the first basketball player to ever be compensated for his.
That's why it's popular. It was the first.
Because he was the greatest. But anyway,
if Kareem Abdul-Jabbar would have come out with the first signature shoe, Kareem's would be the best-selling shoe of all time.
Maybe. Jordan shoes are just sexy too. I've got a pair. They're great.
Yeah,
I love
and Kareem
they're
wore white Skechers, so
Converse.
I mean nobody would have bought them.
Yeah. Speaking of, shout out, if you haven't seen the movie Air on Amazon Prime, check it out. It's great. Great movie about the whole idea behind it. Jordan's mom is the actual GOAT because she's the one to set a lot of this up without giving too much away. It's a great movie. Check it out. Amazon Prime, both free. Great movie.
Yeah, I've given this suggestion on this here podcast before, so now you're going to get it from both of us. Watch the movie.
Great movie. The other one, and this makes me angry.
Is this Taylor again?
Yeah, it's Bowen is what it is. Bowen Everson is what it is. All
right, is Taylor in the apartment with you right now?
No.
Okay, good, because she might hear some words.
Yeah, this one actually makes me very angry. Marcus Smart's best years are behind him. He is becoming a defensive liability.
So there's some nerds run sports, and nerds run sports media, most importantly. There are probably some numbers out there, and I've seen a few of them, so there's not probably. But there are numbers that say that he declined this year versus his DPOY year last year. To which I say, okay, fine. He's not flawless. The DPOY award last year was widely contested. It was not a runaway like in years past. And so the splitting of a lot of votes probably helped Marcus Smart. But don't for a minute call him a liability.
Absolutely not.
I'm a realist. I'll say it like it is or how I feel regarding the Grizzlies, regardless of how much I love them. I'll try to be honest. He's a good defender. He's a really good defender. He is 6'4" or 6'3". He's not going to guard fours very well. He's not going to guard wings, big wings, very well. But he will be a good to really good on-ball defender. Yep. And he, off-ball, is one of the biggest pests in passing lanes that there is in the NBA. He's an impact defender. I don't care about your analytics. Watch the game.
I'm reading a book right now. Quick shout out, Thinking 101. It's a book written by a Yale psychology professor. It's just about improving your thinking about different things in life. And one of the chapters
sounds boring.
It's dry at times, but it's actually really thought.
Oh, you tell me a psychology book is dry?
Right. But pun intended, it's thought provoking. And one of the chapters is all about the regression to the mean. Yeah. And so, she talks about the curse of Sports Illustrated, right? Tom Brady had won a couple Super Bowls. He was in his prime, and he had a bad year after being on the cover of Sports Illustrated. She cited another example. Maybe the DPOY was just that one, like, really, really great year. And even though Marcus Smart is not at that level, he's still at a really good level. But it's like, oh, well, he won the DPOY 2 years ago, and he wasn't the same last year. Cool. He played at a really, really high level 2 years ago, maybe benefited from some vote splitting. Maybe it was just a really, really great year. He's still a great defender. He just may not have been at that DPOY level because there were guys like Jaren Jackson Jr. who had a monster year.
Right. I mean, it's it's a no-brainer. You're nitpicking.
Exactly.
And two, it's like saying, well, if the Nuggets don't win the championship next year and repeat, then they're not good anymore, and this is the decline. Like, no, I mean, to win an individual award, any awards you get that goes to one person in the whole NBA is impressive and should never, ever, ever, ever be expected.
Right. How many hundreds of guys are vying for the DPOI, and a 6'3" guard in Boston won it?
Right. And so it's an amazing accomplishment, and it's a feather in the cap. I mean, it's not, you don't take it to the bank. If Marcus Smart is an slightly above average defender next year, fine. He's still a great locker room guy. Yep. He's still an elite backup point guard. If that's all he turns out to be, he will be the best backup point guard we have.
Yeah.
And you got him for nothing, in my opinion.
So miss me with that defensive liability mess. We're moving on. I'm mad about that. Next, my buddy Jake up in Boston, good friend of mine, golf buddy, reached out and said, would love to hear y'all's opinion. I think this is interesting on how Las Vegas went from a nothing sports town to what it is today.
Oh, I think it was the legalization of sports betting on a wide scale. And I think that's what put it over the edge is the sports leagues themselves becoming active in the gambling industry and getting title sponsors from Caesars or MGM or whatever their casino of choice is. That was probably what pushed it over the edge and made them be aggressors in getting teams there. Mm-hmm. But it's always been a hub for entertainment, and it should have always had teams there anyways.
They should have had one years ago. You're absolutely right. But instead of, like, sports gambling was always that uncle or that cousin that nobody talked about that was over in the corner of the room. And now that it's starting to get more mainstream and more people involved, you got great organizations like DraftKings and Penn and all these other daily fantasy sports, all these other options to bet on sports that are coming into the mainstream media. It's now accepted, so they're getting teams. But I agree, they should have had one years ago. It's a great entertainment city. It's going to be a great sports hub once they get the Oakland Athletics there. They've got the Knights who played for the Stanley Cup this year, won a Stanley Cup this year. And then the Raiders are there. The A's are coming. There's a really, really good chance they're going to get an NBA team in the not-so-distant future. It's becoming a great sports town, and it should have been all along to go along with all the other entertainment they already have.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. And, like you said, growing up in high school and even while we were in college, sports betting was done with the guy around the corner that
real hush-hush.
You called him by a nickname, and he had his burner phone and a sack full of cash, and he did his own lines. That was sports betting. Now sports betting is, for lack of a better word, cool. It's welcomed. It is a way for sports leagues to gain more fans because as well as I do, playing fantasy football and take it to the nth degree with actually gambling. Stop pointing.
Those of you listening, I'm pointing to my fantasy football trophy from the 2022 NFL season that Fat Drunk Thor won last year.
Yeah, so what I learned in fantasy football is that if there's stakes, if I feel like I've got personal stake in it, I care so much more about it. I used to think college football was superior, and I loved watching college football. Fantasy football has put Sundays right up there with Saturdays with me because of the risk involved in the skin I've got in the game. You take that to the nth degree when you're actually talking money. And so you can make a college basketball game between Montana State and South Dakota State very gut-wrenching if you put a $20 bill on the line.
100%. And I cannot wait for it to be legal in South Carolina. I know it's coming. It's going to make things much more interesting. It'll make me interested in the Blue Jays and the Yankees in a way that I never have been before.
Oh, I will never bet on the MLB. Never.
Yeah. But it'll make those games interesting if you choose to bet on those. And so I'm excited about what that future holds. And teams in Las Vegas are only going to make that better. It's only going to get better. I hope the Athletics, we've talked about this on this podcast, I hope they take it serious and really start trying to inject some money into their payroll and their players. Not that really helps because the Mets are doing terrible this year with the highest payroll in professional baseball. But I hope they take it serious. I hope they do get an NBA franchise, and not for the reasons we detailed last week, where I hope to have some more sleep watching the Memphis Grizzlies in the Eastern Conference. But I think it'd be just great for sports in general for Vegas to be competitive in all of the major sports leagues.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to go that far. I don't know that the sports team itself will be great. I mean, Vegas is Vegas, and Vegas is a draw regardless. I think it makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think putting a team in Vegas boosts the NBA.
I think it will. I think
it boosts the NBA for owners because the property value goes up.
Well, sports betting is going to go up because you got a team there. I think it's going to help in a lot of ways. And we've already there's a PGA event. There's a NASCAR race out there now. Like, it's becoming
Formula
more
One's going to have a race there.
Absolutely. There's races in the desert. There's a lot of things going on out there from a sports perspective, and adding more teams, that's only going to make it better.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I think I may not be as gung ho as on the impact it has on, say, me as a Grizzlies fan, but I digress. I'll give it to you.
I think it's good for sports in a whole, maybe not impacting us in our little circles, but it's good for sports as a whole.
Yeah.
And then Jake's last comment, and I think we'll get to this in all of our episodes coming up. He wants us to cover everything from football to hockey to Formula One to hosting WNBA All-Star games. And so we've got a lot of topics
Rusty,
to cover.
So trivia question. Do you know what tonight is?
It's past my bedtime. It's 11 o'clock, June 28th.
No, but what significant in sports is happening right now?
I got nothing.
You have no idea. And you call yourself
the NHL, the hockey draft's going on tonight.
Yeah. So who was the first pick?
And
what team?
The Blackhawks took him. He's a center. Connor McRae. Close.
Bedard.
So
I saw a funny video today. So there was the draft is in Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
And there was this guy, I'm assuming he's a big NHL fan from Nashville, and he was doing one of those little videos where you go up and you find strangers on the street and you ask them questions about the NHL or whatever events going on. And he's in Nashville, so he's assuming all these, bachelorette party goers don't know much. Mm-hmm. Well, he stops this guy who's just in a t-shirt and a backwards cap, young, fit-ish looking guy, and he proceeds to say, well, how much do you know about hockey? And he said, well, I know a fair amount. He said, I'm going to give you 20 seconds. Name as many hockey players you can. And he just starts rolling them off. Just rolling off. I mean, for the last 20 years. Names I don't know, but that don't even say much. He started off like, Wayne Gretzky, Mario Lemieux, and then he starts off just deep cuts, apparently. And the guy was like, wow, you know a lot of guys. And he's like, yeah, I'm a big Blackhawks fan. Like, oh, cool. Well, do you think that the NHL rigged the draft lottery to give the Chicago Blackhawks the first pick of the draft?
Any lottery is going to be rigged like that, yeah.
And he just looked at him. He said, no. So, well, you said that pretty confident. And he was just like, kind of shrugged him off. It was the general manager of the Chicago Blackhawks. And so he was all kind of tongue-in-cheek with it for a while, and he's kind of going. And then he asked him, do you think the NHL rigged the draft lottery to give the Chicago Blackhawks someone pick? And he immediately just looked at him, dead-faced, and said, no.
Because he had to.
Yeah. So,
because he had no choice.
Rusty from the $2 Twitter account, retweet that when you get a chance. I'll have to find it, but
I can.
We'll put that on the account. It's really funny. It's
really
good. Two big content videos that happened in the city of Nashville within the last couple months. That was just A+.
The Titans schedule release will forever go down as the greatest NFL schedule release of all time.
Right.
If you haven't seen it, we'll retweet it as well. If you had me living on a rock to have not seen it somewhere, but it's just great. They polled these random citizens on the streets of Nashville to tell us, who are these NFL logos of? And some of the answers are incredible. Incredible. My favorite is they show the Jaguars to one girl. She's like, that's not real. That's a fake. That's a
not
fake
a real
logo.
team.
But Jake, as requested, we're going to cover a couple sports before we dive into what was a phenomenal College World Series, and I can't wait to talk about that for a little bit. Lionel Messi, is going to be a U.S. soccer player. I think that's a big sports thing we didn't really get to last week. So he's leaving overseas.
He was at what was it? Paris Saint-Germain in Italy.
Well, now he's going to be at FC Miami. He is taking his talents to South Beach and going to play for the football club in Miami in the U.S.
Inter
soccer
Miami.
league.
Yeah.
And
So,
MLS, man.
This is huge for like soccer fans, and I
In
feel
the
like
US especially.
I'm starting to feel like I may be I'm in the majority, but the majority is not as big as it once was when it comes to soccer non-fans, not soccer fans, because that was a very confusing way of putting it. But basically,
we got there, but it took a while.
Soccer fans in the U.S. are growing. They're still in the minority, but they're growing. That's what I'm trying to say. This is huge for them. I mean, you're talking about arguably the second best footballer of all time. Mm-hmm. It's like a Jordan, LeBron debate, when you're talking Messi versus Ronaldo versus, whoever.
LA or whoever.
Yeah. And so he is one of the all-time greats. He just captured the only thing that has avoided him his whole career with a World Cup that he won
for Argentina.
And right off of that, he's going to come play at Inter Miami, a team that's owned by David Beckham. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be fun. I mean, I don't know. It's the biggest possible way you could move the needle for the MLS.
100%.
It's like saying, I've got a startup business. Let's go hire Elon Musk.
That'd be like Tom Brady going to play in the XFL.
Right.
It's a huge move across divisions, across leagues, to one that really doesn't MLS is growing in the United States, but like you said, the majority of people in the United States don't care about football, soccer. Right. They care about the American League, real football. But this is a huge step in the direction of growing the MLS, getting one of the game's biggest stars of all time to play on an MLS club.
Yeah, and what I've found about soccer fans that I've found to be true in my limited experience is that they're all arrogant, and they're like, England has better soccer, and Germany has better soccer, and La Liga is better, and whatever. And so he's washed. That's why he's going to MLS. That's why Zlatan Ibrahimovic went to the MLS, and that's why David Beckham went to the MLS. It's because they're washed. And to those people, I just want to say, so he's freaking Lionel Messi. He, as a washed, however old he is, if you want to say he's washed, I don't believe he is. He just won a freaking World Cup. So if you want to say he's washed to cope with the breakup, that's fine. But as an American and they're trying to really start to push forward the MLS and grow the MLS, you could not have done it any better than to get Lionel Messi. And they pulled out all these stops. He gets a cut of every single Apple TV subscriber that subscribes after the time that it was announced that he was coming to the MLS. Right. Because Apple TV is the main streaming platform for the MLS. And so he said, fine, if you're going to air my games on Apple TV, then I want a cut of every new subscriber you get because of me. And he is going to have so much money.
Yeah, not that he doesn't already. Hundreds of millions in contracts, but now like great grandkids that he'll never meet will be set up because of this deal.
It's like saying, okay, the Grizzlies want to go get who's the big name free agent? Draymond Green. Okay, you want to go get Draymond Green, but Draymond Green says, "Fine, I want $50 from every Bally Sports subscriber for the regional sports broadcast for the Grizzlies." Like, that's unheard of.
It's like Michael Jordan saying, "I want a cut of every shoe that's got my name on it." I mean, it's a new cutting edge shoe. Yeah.
Lionel Messi owns stake in Apple.
Yeah. A lot more than I do. I've got some, but not as much as he has all of a sudden.
Good grief.
Yeah.
What? So if somebody wanted to buy our podcast for exclusive rights, how much would we charge per, like, on a 0 to 100%? Like, all right, so for every new subscriber that you get, I want 33% of it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll split a third of the revenue that we bring to Spotify, which will soon make Joe Rogan feel like nothing.
Absolutely.
Joe who? That UFC guy? Yeah.
The Fear Factor guy?
Move over, Fear Factor. The $2 are here.
That's right.
So, okay. What else?
Point made. Congratulations, Messi and Inter Miami. Big win for them.
I wish I could have gotten some season tickets to Inter Miami before a week before that happened.
Oh my gosh, those things are gonna be stupid expensive now.
I mean, they were like the worst team in the MLS last year, I think, or it's what I've heard. Anyway, I didn't
anymore.
So you could probably went from being like, getting into a Wizards game, you could go in for $5 and sit baseline, to now you're scraping up all the change in your couch to get in the arena.
I honestly think a good comparison would be the Cam Newton sweepstakes when he was coming out of Florida, went to junior college. Like, whatever SEC team got him, whether it was Mississippi State or ultimately Auburn or whoever got him, was going to be a contender because of who Cam Newton was. And now that's this soccer team, this football club in Miami.
Right.
So
that's enough soccer talk.
Yeah. So moving on, back to the sports that matters. Did you see Shohei Ohtani's stat line last night?
I meant to bring this up in our last podcast, and it just slipped my mind. Just talking about how great he's been. Like, he's leading the MLB in strikeouts as a pitcher and he's second in the MLB in strikeouts as a pitcher and first in home runs.
Matt Olson's right on his heels from Atlanta in home runs, but just another level, man. And then last night, he was the first player since the year of our Lord, 1936, before color television, before reliable car transportations,
before the Great War.
Yeah. To have 10 strikeouts and 2 home runs in the same game. It's filthy.
It's stupid.
It's just dumb.
Did you see the tweet that was making its rounds today, where in 2000 and what?
The Mets fan in
2012, so 13 years ago, he said, y'all need to go look at this 18-year-old kid in Japan. He's throwing 100 miles an hour. You should go sign him right now and tag the Mets owner.
Before somebody else does.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean, just a generational talent. That guy's just unbelievable and humble and funny and just seems like, in all intents and purposes, a good dude. Probably going to be a Dodger before it's all said and done, which I hate. I wish
he needs to be on the East Coast.
He needs to come to Chicago, man. It's a great place to play baseball.
Yeah, you can go be average there too.
Yeah, he's another one of those guys.
He's not
when
average.
He comes in, that team's gonna get a lot better.
Yeah, like the Angels, they've got freaking Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani.
I was watching Mookie Betts and Mike Trout were on a podcast not long ago, and I saw a clip of it today, and they were interviewing Mookie and Mike, and he said, Mike came up to me before the USA games this past year, right before the season started, and said, "Is this what a playoff atmosphere feels like?" And it's like, Mike Trout is a 10-time All-Star, 8-time Gold Glove, 7-time Silver Slugger, whatever it is, 3-time MVP, and has never played in a playoff game.
It's stupid.
That's just wild to me, man. He is one of the greatest baseball players of all time, definitely of our generation, and has never played in a single playoff game.
I love those tweets talking about Trout and Shohei, and most of the time how it's in a loss.
Yeah.
Like, it was last night. It was the first time I've seen it where they won, where it was like Shohei Ohtani struck out 10 people and had 2 home runs. Mike Trout did this, and the Angels won 4-2.
Incredible. But speaking of that, man, speaking of baseball, we had one of the best College World Series outside of our teams winning it in a long time. And it was funny. Speaking of that, we'll get kind of in the ins and outs of it. But Carl Ravitch on the call after LSU won the national championship, or I think it may have been during that third game, said, have you ever seen the stadium so one-sided with fans like LSU is right now? And Kyle Peterson, without missing a beat, said, yeah, Mississippi State and Ole Miss was.
I'm telling you, and I was there last year. That stadium holds 26,000 people. There was no less than 23,000 Ole Miss fans there.
That's exactly how it was for State. That's exactly how it was this year for Ole Miss, or for LSU.
It was like Vaught Hemingway Stadium in there, and not Matt Luke Vaught Hemingway Stadium, like 2015 Vaught Hemingway, Chad Kelly Vaught Hemingway Stadium in there.
But we had some of the greatest baseball games. We had some of the wildest finishes, even in the College World Series. Not the finals, leading up to it.
Yeah.
The first game 1 of the finals was a phenomenal game. You had the Cajun Bambino hitting a home run in the 11th to win the game, and Beloso. But then Sunday came, and Florida put up. I sent you the stat. What a wild stat, right? Florida scored more runs in their baseball game against LSU on Sunday than they have in 44 or 43 of their 66 all-time matchups in football. They scored more runs in a baseball game than they did 43 times against Louisiana State University in football on Sunday when they won 24-3, only to turn around and lose on Monday 18-4 to the same Florida Gators on Monday night to win the national championship. What a wild turn of events Monday was.
Yeah, so I can put this in a little perspective. First, you're right. The College World Series, all the way up until the finals, and even the first game of the finals, was electric.
Mm-hmm.
I think, the most lopsided game was probably when TCU put out Oral Roberts.
6-0,
and they just 6-1.
6-1.
And they just kind of fizzled. But every game was walk-off or late inning lead changes or comebacks. I mean, it was incredible.
Game and when Tennessee lost by 3 runs were the largest margin of victory leading up to game 2 of the finals.
Yeah. And then the penultimate game, the game to decide it all on the last side of the bracket, Wake Forest and LSU. You had Paul Skeens versus I'm blanking on his name, Rusty. Wake
Jack
Forest
Caglione
pitcher.
and Paul Skeens?
Wake Forest pitcher. Pitcher.
Rhett Lauder.
Rhett Lauder versus Paul Skeens went 11 at 0-0. It was
game.
The fastest, most intense non-Ole Miss baseball game I've ever watched. It was epic television.
I was on the edge of my seat breathing heavy, and I had no dog in the hunt whatsoever.
Right. And so that goes into the 11th inning, and Tommy White walks it off, and just you see the sheer defeat in the pitcher who came in to throw one pitch and give up the walk-off.
Tommy Tanks.
And Tommy Tanks, just
it was
Kansas great.
City just bombed and won the game.
Right. And so that leads us to the World Series finals. And like Rusty said, Florida came back, won game 1 by 1 run. It was great. And then you have the opportunity to win it. And so this was the same schedule that Ole Miss had last year. So you play Saturday night, 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock local time. You have an intense game. You win it. And then you play a matinee on Saturday. And so if you don't win that second game, you have to think about what happened from 6:30 Saturday, a full 24 hours to Sunday. And LSU got worked that second game.
Ooh.
And I thought it was over for that very reason. Me and my dad, Ole Miss wins game 1. In game 2, I was like, we really need to win this because we're going to get everybody there. 23,000 Ole Miss fans that are there are going to be so nervous for 24 hours leading up to a winner-take-all game 3 that we've been in this before. We know we're all going to be expecting to lose when you have to wait that long and everything is in the balance. You need to win this one. And so when LSU went out there and just got worked, 24-2,
3.
24-3, and to respond like that in a winner take all game after you just got beat by 3 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion, it was impressive.
Yeah. And to do it against Jack Caglione, who's one of their better pitchers, he's not their best.
And he's been really bad lately.
He did not have a great College World Series. Now, he hit the league leading or the NCAA leading 32nd home run of the year in the last game. His back came on, but he was coming into that at bat. He was like 3 for 30 at Omaha. Just had not had a great tournament.
Yeah, in game 1 or game 2 rather, he had 2 home runs in what turned out to be meaningless stats.
Yeah.
But boy, he was wild. And he could not find the zone. No. I think he made it an inning and a third or something like that.
And they waited too long. He loaded the bases up before they finally pulled him. At that point, it was too late. And it was sad that what was a great College World Series. I mean, it was decided by the 4th inning that LSU was going to be the national champ.
Yeah, I mean, as it's been said on this podcast, I was extremely preoccupied, and I would check the score, envious of the people who were able to watch it. This is it. This is what we've all been working towards. And it was kind of like the Grizzlies in Game 6 against the Lakers, where you lose by 40, you get to go to bed early and kind of get an early start to getting hyped for next season. You know,
that's it. It's officially football season now because that's the next thing coming up as we get college football coming up next. So it was kind of a sad ending to it. And Jay Johnson made some interesting comments I want to get your thoughts on afterwards. You know, used to, it was always about, like, you got to win the state, recruiting the state. If you grow up in LSU, you play baseball at Louisiana, you play baseball at LSU. You grow up in Mississippi, you go to state, Ole Miss, whatever. Jay Johnson said a little bit different message after the game. He said, hey, look to my right here, sitting next to Tommy White. He said, if you're in the transfer portal out there and you're looking for a place to come play baseball and win national championships, this is where you want to go. And I thought that was interesting.
That was orchestrated. He was sitting on a podium with 3 players. It was Tommy Tanks, it was Thatcher Hurd, and it was Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens transferred this year from Air Force. Tommy Tanks transferred last year from NC State, and Thatcher Hurd, their best reliever and probably their second best pitcher in the College World Series, is a transfer from UCLA.
Outside of Riley Cooper, that unit was slinging it in the finals. But anyway.
Yeah, but he got a lot more innings. Anyways, that can be debated. But, you know, we're allowed to have differing opinions.
Sure.
You can be wrong. But he got up there. It was perfectly orchestrated where you get your 3 transfers. You sit down with your brand new wooden hardware that says National Champions on it, College World Series champions, with your College World Series MVP and your 2 other key players that are both transfers, and say, hey, look what we can do with transfers.
Yeah.
You're telling me he's not picking off the top of the pile
100%.
For transfers from here on out. He's been doing it anyways. But
it's Nick Saban picking the best high school recruits. He's just skimming the top of the transfer portal. And it's just an interesting message that you wouldn't have heard 3 years ago. Obviously, a lot has changed in the landscapes, you know, in the last couple of years with the transfer portal having less restrictions, whatnot. It was just an interesting comment, one that I'd never really heard before in that position. And I was kind of like, I mean, yeah, they won a national championship on the backs of, but then again, like 6 of their 9 starters were from Ole Miss or from Louisiana. But their key contributors, a lot of them were those transfer kids. And it's just an interesting new message.
It's the difference of last year getting put out in the regionals against Southern Miss versus this year winning in the whole thing.
Yeah.
That was it.
Made all the difference.
Yeah, it was the transfers. Now, Tommy Tanks was there last year, but the other 2 pitchers weren't. And if you could win every single Friday night because you've got Paul Skeens, it's not that hard to win another one.
And you got the first and second pick in the MLB draft next month, and Dylan Cruz, who's one of the best college baseball players of our lifetime. And then you got Paul Skeens, this year, won the Golden Spites Award. And you have Paul Skeens, who's now probably going to be the number 1 overall pick, who against Tulane in the regionals, pitched 126 pitch complete game, and pitch 126 was a 102-mile-an-hour fastball to win the game.
Right.
So it was just an interesting comment.
The Pittsburgh Pirates have the first pick of the draft, and I don't think whoever's picking second is going to have the opportunity to pick Paul Skeens.
No, he will not.
Strikes me. He's got the command and the what's the word I'm looking for? He's got the dynamics, the command, the velocity, everything you want for somebody who you expect to, like Ben Joyce had last year. Yep. He's going to be in the major leagues in at most a year and a half.
Just like Strasburg, just like Ben Joyce, he will spend at most a year, if not see some late action this next season. But for sure, opening day of the next, he will be pitching for the Pittsburgh Pirates. So
yeah,
100%. But hey, listen, I don't make the rules, but LSU, you won this year. You got to finish last in the SEC next year. I'm sorry, but them the rules. I don't make them.
Them's the rules. I don't know how you're going to get there. It would seem more obvious on how Ole Miss and Mississippi State was going to be there.
Right.
But they're rules, you know.
We don't make them. You just got to live by them.
Yeah. So welcome to the gutter. Mississippi State will probably get to move up to the 12th seed in the SEC tournament. We'll be 13.
But yeah, great wrap up of the College World Series. Last couple of topics I want to get to, unless you got anything else about the College World Series.
We can talk about the electrical grid. That's what I've been thinking about for the last.
Nah, we ain't talking about that.
96 hours.
If our listeners have made it this far, I don't want to put them to sleep with that. But if you don't like college baseball, you're wrong. Make sure you tune in next year. Pick your alma mater. Root for them next year. Enjoy what is one of the most electric and best atmospheres in all sports in college baseball. But last two things, one kind of happy, one pretty sad. We'll lead off with a sad one, end on a happy note, man. RIP Ryan Mallett. What a sad story out of the Gulf Coast this weekend, where former Arkansas and New England Patriot quarterback, who was a phenom there for a couple years with Arkansas in 2011 before going to the Patriots, and was a local high school coach there in Arkansas, giving back. Unfortunately, drowned this weekend with some of the rip currents going on the Gulf Coast. So, Drew, I don't know about you, but I vividly remember watching those long legs run down the sideline, making these monster throws, winning games for Arkansas in that year that there were 3 SEC West teams in the top 10 before ultimately losing to Ohio State in the Sugar Bowl. But RIP Ryan Mallett, 35 years old. What a sad story that came out of the Gulf Coast this weekend.
Yeah, Ryan Mallett was always known for having just the biggest arm cannon of all time. Mm. He sat in the pocket and he just chucked it deep. Mm-hmm. You know, growing up, there was nothing more furious than what was his name? Matt Jones.
Matt Jones. He was the running Arkansas quarterback.
Yeah, who was about 6'6" and just glided. Ryan Mallett was a sit in the pocket and he's going to chuck it deep. Mm-hmm. And yeah, he had a cup of coffee in the NFL as a backup for Tom Brady for a little bit and kind of bounced around, but he went way too soon. And it sucks when it's something like that, which seems avoidable, but regardless, it's way too soon. Yeah. Be careful at the beach, folks. I know we went last year or in April, and there were double red flags all week we were there, and it was so frustrating. But it's not worth getting caught up in something like that. So be safe. RIP to Ryan Mallett. Just sad, man.
Just sad, man. But RP, our condolences to him and his family. Just hate that it went out that way. But we'll wrap up. The NBA free agency starts this weekend on Friday. We've talked about it a little bit already. There was one trade we didn't get to, and that was the Chris Paul to the Golden State Warriors. He is now was a Washington Wizard for a very brief time. They brought in Tyus Jones, didn't have a need for CP3 anymore because they got such a great point guard in Tyus Jones, so they shipped him out west. And the funniest part of that trade was Washington got Jordan Poole back, but the only way they'd take him is if they included a first-round pick with Jordan Poole to offset that bad contract he's under for a bad player.
Yeah, it was very – listen, I'm very much a proponent of if you make a mistake, don't make another mistake trying to fix the mistake.
Mm-hmm.
Don't try to save face by trying to make it work so hard.
Mm.
That was the thing. Back in the day, I can't remember, was it Steve Mariucci, the old coach for the Detroit Lions?
Steve Mariucci, yeah.
Yeah. So Steve Mariucci drafted Chad Pennington. No. The guy from Oregon. Who am I thinking of?
Joey Harrison.
Joey Harrington. And Joey Harrington, they drafted him, I don't know, number 1 pick, top pick, whatever. The next year, they drafted a wide receiver in the top 5 or 10 picks. They suck again. They draft another wide receiver. They suck again. They draft another wide receiver. They suck again. And what Steve Mariucci came out and said was, we kept trying to fix the Joey Harrington problem by getting better wide receivers when we should have just gotten a better quarterback. And that's what Golden State did. Jordan Poole had an incredible year in 2022. He got paid a massive amount of money to turn into an absolute pumpkin and get punched in the face by Draymond Green.
Yeah. And it's sad that your team goes with the guy who punched you over you who received the punch.
And what's crazy is, yes, they shipped a first-round pick off to get rid of his contract, much like they did Andre Iguodala with Grizzlies. That Golden State pick that we just traded to Boston to get Marcus Smart came from Golden State in a deal that was basically, we'll give you a first-round pick, but you have to take Andre Iguodala, and that's it. You don't really
went
need
on
anything
that
in
sob
return.
story on all over ESPN and made
so,
him one of the most hated athletes in Memphis.
Yeah, and so props to Golden State for getting off of their mistake and not having too much pride. Of course, that a lot of that probably comes with there's now a new GM, and the new GM's not tied to Jordan Poole. So what's funny about it, though, is that I feel like Chris Paul is like a worse fit than Jordan Poole.
Like, where's he going to? Steph is the point guard.
But Chris Paul's whole mantra is he is the field general, the point guard. He is going to set everything up, and he sets the pace, and his pace is typically always slow.
Yeah.
And Golden State is a fly around, chucking threes, wide open offense, and I don't really know how he fits in, especially at his age.
Yeah, because Steph runs that offense and runs it at a high pace, facilitates, and through his facilitation then works and gets open. It's not a great fit. It's really, he's obviously chasing a ring and hoping to finally get that elusive ring. It's going to be the curse of Chris Paul, the Charmin curse, if you will. You don't win a championship with Chris Paul, but I agree. I do not love the fit in Golden State.
It's almost like he's going to be the guy that's in the corner, ready to catch the kickouts. And if that's what he turned out to be, he will be good at that role. He's a good shooter.
Yeah, he'll be the Ray Allen that Ray Allen was in Miami, where he runs around for a minute and stands in the corner and waits for that three. But
the beauty of Golden State basketball, and the reason why I've always found it insanely enjoyable to watch, is the fact that anybody can run the show at any time. It's fluid. It's the old San Antonio Spurs thing. That's where Steve Kerr came from. Anybody can touch the ball. Anybody can make the passes. Anybody can run the offense. Everybody's going to cut. We're equal opportunity distributors, equal opportunity shooters here. And it just feels like the ball is going to stop with Chris Paul.
Yeah.
So,
it feels
I don't know. I hope, but I mean, this could really work out well for the Grizzlies if Chris Paul and the Warriors suck.
Yeah.
Together.
Listen, I don't know, there are teams that are probably more talented than us, but when we're healthy, there's going to be a lot of teams that are going to have a hard time beating us.
Yeah.
But anyway, CP3, not a great fit Golden State, but he got sent out there. Going to be some big moves. There always is with the NBA free agency. It's one of the better free agencies in sports because there's usually there's usually some big movement and guys moving around. There's always a smoke around Dame Lillard, which I'm at the point like most people are, like either move or don't, but I'm tired of hearing about it. Yeah. But big things are going to happen over the next couple of weeks as it gets sorted out. But Drew, that's all I got for tonight. You got anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, I'm good. I feel like we covered all the topics, and we
it's
did it in a rather timely manner.
Yeah, but
Rusty's got to go to bed. He's been pushing this. He's like, "Are you done yet? Are you done yet?" He's been texting me like, "Dude, just wrap up. I'm trying to get this thing done in 25 minutes," and he just keeps letting me talk, so I keep talking.
My Geritol and my sleeping pills kicked in, and I got to go to bed because I got to be up in the morning to get my paper and chase the kids off my lawn.
Well, you can come get these kids out of my house if you like. So, all right. I've enjoyed it, Rusty. It has been so nice to sit down and unwind and talk to you about sports and life for an hour and a half tonight. I greatly enjoyed it. Can't wait to do it again next week.
Yeah, man. Tell them where they can find us.
Yeah, so $2 Sports Podcast, the number $2 Sports Podcast on Twitter and Instagram. And yeah, that's them. Yep. And $2 Sports Pod on Spotify and Apple and YouTube. Wherever you want to find us, leave us a comment, review us, give us 5 stars. You can say whatever you want as long as you say 5 stars.
Yep.
So,
and you're out there looking to sponsor a podcast that is on the up and up. We are on the rise. We've got almost over 2,000 downloads now. We're growing at a rapid pace. So please sponsor us. We'll whatever. We'll let you sponsor whatever great segment, even the Cousin Kirk sponsor segment, man. Just let us know. We will feature you on our podcast.
Yeah. What is the line? What thing would you not sponsor? You just brought up Geritol. I mean, would you sponsor
that's a fun. Blood money from the Saudis probably wouldn't do it for me.
I'd take it.
It depends how many zeros are there. I might take it.
I'd take it.
I don't know. Listen, man, I can be bought. I got student loans. I got stuff to pay off. So,
are you paying on your student loans?
No, I don't have a ton more left, but I do have some. Yeah.
Oh man, that must stink. I graduated. Let's see, almost 3 years ago, and I've yet to make a student loan payment. Thanks, COVID.
Yeah, I've been making mine all along, and that number hadn't gotten a whole lot smaller.
Yeah, that sounds like my mortgage.
Yeah,
probably the same amount of money.
That's fair. That's fair.
What you get, Dr. Witten.
Yeah, and you live in Ripley.
We went to the college for the same amount of years. You left with a whole lot of debt and a doctorate degree, and I left with a fair amount of debt and an engineering bachelor's.
There you go.
So
listen, man, I enjoyed it. You hold the fort down there in North Mississippi, and to all our faithful listeners, if you made it this far, we really appreciate you. We'll see you back here next week at the same time.
Yeah, man. Bye.